Well, hello everybody. My name is Josh. I am an account executive here at Aprica or Mission Control, and I've been here for about 8 weeks now, so pretty new. And today we're going to be going through some of the features in the Mission Control platform. Just going to wait about 1 minute just to allow some people to join, and then we're going to get stuck in. So we'll go through a couple of slides together just to make sure that we've covered off, a little bit of background on the organization and focus a little bit more about what we're going to cover. And then I'm going to get stuck straight into the demo. So what I'm going to do quickly is share my screen. Just give me 1 second, just so that I've got that should be coming through now. Okay, so we are going to cover the project management piece of Mission Control. We're going to touch a little bit on resource allocation, so how we're resourcing our staff. We're going to talk a little bit about billing and a little bit about timesheets as well. So we've run through the introductions. As I mentioned, I've been here for about 8 weeks. So Salesforce 2 years. So I've probably been using Salesforce a little bit more technically for the past 2 years, but I've been in SaaS technology sales for about 10 years now. So I've used Salesforce as my CRM, and I've got a Preca 1 year, but yeah, under 1 year at the moment. So what we're going to go through is a little bit of a background on Mission Control. We have been on the App Exchange now for about 15 years. And my two co-founders, Colin and Chris, they were working in the Salesforce ecosystem, wanted to build a tool that was going to make their day-to-day easier. They realized how good it was, and here we are selling Mission Control globally across the world. So you can see there we cover 25 countries. And that kind of helps us as well because we're scattered as a team across the globe too. So a couple of things to point out about Mission Control. The number one is we are native to the Salesforce platform. When I say native, it's not a separate login where you have to integrate the tool. Really, all it is a App Exchange install package that you can put into your Salesforce account and utilize our custom objects that we've built. A couple of things to highlight on this screen as well is it works out of the box. And when I say that, really, if you were to install Mission Control, the package into your Salesforce account, you could start to utilize those custom objects without really any provisioning. Obviously, we have a lot of clients that need not necessarily custom work, but they want to tailor it to the way that they work. But if you did want to use it pretty much from scratch, it does work out of the box. When it says no implementation required, really what the focus here is we've got such amazing supporting documentation, training documentation, a learning portal, a certification process that could help you get implementation implemented on your own. Or you can lean on the team and we can also assist you with implementing as well. And I mentioned it in my previous slide that we are a global company covering pretty much everywhere. So you've got access to pretty much 24/7 support. A little bit about us from a metrics perspective. I just wanted to cover a little bit about our G2 ratings and our NPS scores. You can see down the bottom there that 81 NPS score. I guess in comparison to some of our competitors, our clients are really happy with the platform. And another thing that I'll point out as well is on this side just talks about the amount of time it takes to go live. About 88% of our customers are up and running within a 4-week period. So, we've obviously got some customers when they're going through implementation, might take a little bit longer because they might have some customizations or integrations that they want to build. But realistically, it's a very easy platform to get implemented. What I'm going to go through now is a feature wall. And I'm not going to talk about all of these pieces, but just to highlight a couple that I'm going to be covering today. So from a resource management perspective, we're going to cover the scheduler. We're going to talk about our resource assignment wizard and reassignment wizard. So being able to allocate pieces of work to individuals. and also being able to select the right person. We've got a really, really cool kind of not AI wizard, but a functionality that can recommend the correct staff to us, for the work that they're going to be doing. From a project management perspective, I'm really going to cover, the structure of the projects, the different ways that we can generate projects. I'm going to be using that top line, so opportunity auto generation, which is a flow that we've built in the back end, just to show you kind of the ease of use and how we can create projects instead of having to create them from scratch every time. From a management perspective, we cover both agile and waterfall. What we're going to go through today is more of a waterfall approach. But in the management tile, some of the features we'll cover is the Kanban whiteboard, the Gantt chart with the baseline tracking. We'll talk about how we can create some dependencies as well, which is on that Gantt chart. From a time tracking perspective, we can track both billable and non-billable. We have a start-stop tracker as well, instead of having to just manually put in the hours that you have worked against a action. We can also submit timesheets and have timesheets go for approval. From a financial perspective, we're not going to go into too much detail here. What I wanted to do is just show you how we can generate some invoices based on the work that we've done, and give you a little bit of an example of the PDF and what that looks like. And just for the last one, so from a collaboration perspective, I'll touch on how we utilize Chatter, which is a Salesforce functionality. And then we're going to look at a master Gantt chart and a Kanban whiteboard as well. Just wanted to highlight one case study, and this is actually a client that I've been working with now for a couple of weeks. But realistically, we've got a lot of clients and a lot of case studies on our website that you can have a look at, but we are really a metrics-driven company. So we want to make sure that you are getting the ROI for your investment. And you can see here just some really nice stats. They've been able to increase 30% in efficiency, allowing them to deliver more projects and more research. They're a research company. And also being able to, enable project managers to save about 4 days per month, which, is really, really good. Alrighty, we're going to jump into the demo now. So I'm just going to scroll across the screen here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the platform. So what you'll notice is we're in Salesforce. I mentioned that we're native to Salesforce. And when I say native, we are literally inbuilt into the platform. If you wanted to install Mission Control, you can go onto our App Exchange listing, click this Get It Now button, go through a couple of steps using a quick start guide. And then when you jump back into your Salesforce account, you're going to have access to this object or these custom objects that are here. What we're looking at is what we call the Mission Control console. I'm not going to go through all of these steps here, just because I mentioned we're going to be focusing on the project management side of things. So what I'll point out on this screen here are these two project tiles. So if you wanted to start a brand new project from scratch, fresh, no data, it's a new type of work that we're performing for our clients, you would utilize this new project option. The other thing that we can do is clone existing projects. So what I find here is, this is going to be a really efficient way to create project structures based on previous work that we've done with clients. So if you've got, maybe 4 offerings that you're offering a client, we would create a template for each of those offerings, just to speed up the amount of time that you're going through. Just got to quickly check. Give me 1 second here. So the templates are a really, really great way to create projects. Now, the way that I'm going to do this today, as I mentioned earlier, is we're going to be creating a project off the back of an opportunity. So I'm going to click into my opportunity here. I've created this one a little bit earlier, webinar demo for my awesome client, Billabong. And I'll walk you through a couple of pieces of the page here. So you'll notice this looks really, really similar to most opportunity pages. We have our statuses up the top. We've got our opportunity information. But then a couple of things to point out that it might be a little bit different is this bottom box here. So it says project auto generation. What this is here is this is saying once I interact or change a status within the opportunity, I want this to generate a project for me automatically. So I'm going to click into this little pen here just to show you the different options that we have for being able to create a project from scratch or using a template. So there's a couple of different options there. So the one that I'm going to do is opportunity, which I'll touch on in a second. Another option is products. So what you'll notice here on the right-hand side under my products tab is I've got a mission control gold implementation option, and then a data migration as well. So what we can actually do to these individual products is we can implement line items or tasks that make up that product. So what this is saying here is if I was to select products as my project generation method, once I have ticked this box to generate this project, it's then going to structure the project based on the information that's within these product offerings. So I mentioned that the one that I'm going to do is opportunity. So what I want to do here is I want to set a project start date. So we can just set that to today. I want to select my template. So I'm going to use this Billabong template mission control implementation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click save. Then what I've done in the back end of my Salesforce account is I've created a flow that says once I closed one or changed the status of this opportunity to the closed one status, I want you to generate a project for me. So I've selected close one, and what I'll get you to do is just pay attention to this little box down here. When I click the save button, you'll notice that that has now ticked. So what this has said is it's met all the requirements. I've hit my closed one. I've selected my template that I want to generate as the project. It's ticked the box to say that the project has been generated. I'm just going to do a real quick refresh, and you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen here, we now have a project created. So really, really nice and easy. And that's going to speed up the amount of time when we're going to do that. Alrighty, so next thing that we're going to go through is the project in detail. So this is again a mission control piece of functionality. This is going to give us a set of tools for us to manage our projects from start to finish. Couple of things that I'll point out on here is you'll notice that there's a lot of options at the top. Might be overwhelming for some people that are just using it for the first time. But the beauty of Mission Control is we can actually hide specific tools from our users. So as an example, I might have somebody that is, just working on projects, they're logging their time, they're logging their progress, but they don't have anything to do with invoicing or billing customers, right? So we'll probably hide this for that individual. And then we might have an administrator or, somebody in finance that is coming in to generate, invoices or input purchase orders. Another thing that I'll point out is you'll have access to a number of custom objects. So I think there's close to 60, like roughly 58 from memory. Again, we can hide these objects from specific team members. They probably don't need access to all of these, to be honest with you. Some customers utilize a lot of the objects, but you'd find that a lot of our customers, they are, using only certain parts, especially from like a phase one perspective. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a couple of these different tools that we have at the top here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my overview page. Now, something to point out is we have a 7-layer structure to our projects. Overarching, we have what we call a portfolio. Underneath a portfolio, we have what we call a program. So a program could be, as an example, I've got Billabong as a client. I'm building, a webinar demo for Billabong, but I'm also working on a couple of other projects as well. So we can then sit projects underneath our programs, just to make sure that all that information is nice and collated. So then we have the project. So generally, this is where people would start when they're going through. And with the project, this is going to have all of our structures. So that's our 4th level. And then we get to our other levels here. So I mentioned earlier, when we close one an opportunity with a product, attached to it as an example, we might have specific tasks or what we call milestones attached to that product. So this template in particular, this is based on a implementation build. So we can see here that these are my milestones that I need to hit until I get to project close. What we can then do is we can expand and go one level further, and we can create actions underneath our milestones. So I know, as an example, when I'm going through my needs analysis or my discovery phase, I've got to do a reverse demo of what their current state is, maybe a second reverse demo. Then we're going to discuss the requirements that that individual needs or that company needs for us to be able to implement them properly. And then the last step that we can go through is we can actually add what we call checklist items, and that's related to this individual action. So we've got multiple levels when it comes to the structure of the project. So the next thing that I'll point out on this page is the different columns that we have here. So the first one's obviously going to be the name of the individual line item. You'll see owner here and then owner underneath the actions. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later. So this is going to be really, really important. You'll notice that it says placeholder project manager. I'll explain why I've got those placeholders there. Some other things to point out on this screen is the status of this individual piece of work. So currently they're all sitting in plan because I've just set that up. But as my teams start to progress and they start to complete the actions and the milestones, we can update these statuses to, completed, as an example. We've got our start and end date, and you can see here I've got a little kind of warning sign, which is just based on the date there. I've got my total amount of hours that are scheduled for this particular milestone, and my actions are rolling up into the total hours for that milestone there. Then as they start to progress through and they start to log time against the work that they're doing, it's going to then update these total hours completed and then the completion status as well in a percentage. So this is how we would look at our project, at a very high level. We want to see the structure. But what somebody might want to do is we might want to see this structure, but we also would like to see a timeline. So I'm going to click into what we call a Gantt chart. This is our Gantt chart tool. And this is a really, really good way to be able to visualize, what work is upcoming, especially from a planning perspective as well. So similar to my previous screen, I can collapse, the different pieces. So here's my project that I have created. When I hit this plus sign, it's then going to show me the milestones that have made up this individual project. I'm going to expand it one more time. It's going to show me my actions that make up the milestones. And then I can also have a look at my checklist items as well. A couple of cool features that I really like to point out on this Gantt chart is being able to see the baselines. So you can see here a yellow bar has popped up underneath. Now they're all pretty much in line at the moment because I've not had to reschedule anything. But with this Gantt chart being interactive, let's say as an example, this week that I'm working, I've realized I actually can't start it on this week. I'm going to have to push it to the next. I'm going to slide that across. And we can see here that our baselines have actually stayed in place too. The next thing that I like to show is what we call dependencies. So these nicely drawn squiggly lines that are attached to each thing are dependencies that we've created. And what this is going to show here is if I move this particular piece of work, obviously at the top that milestone bar is extended because we've set a start and end date for that. When I release that, we can see here that my dependencies have moved. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage people's time as best as possible. The next thing that I would show you is if I extend out this action as an example, I'm going to drag this out really nice and far. We can see there that all these dependencies, they've included as well. They've all moved, which is a really, really nice way to manage your days. We can export our Gantt chart as well, so PDF, CSV, PNG. From my understanding, we also do Microsoft projects, so there's a couple of different options. And we can also import and export some data from there. So yeah, that's the Gantt chart. Now, one thing I probably should have pointed out as well is these tools at the top, they're related to this project, okay? So all the information that we're seeing here right now is related to the project. if I make changes on the Gantt chart and then I go back to my overview, it's going to show the dates that have changed for each individual line item. The next one that I'm going to show you is the whiteboard. And again, if we're making changes on the whiteboard, it's going to make changes on the Gantt chart and the overview. So everything's nicely connected underneath here. So we call this the whiteboard. It's a Kanban view. We've got different ways that we can, change our columns that are at the top. So right now I've got it by status. I might want to do it by milestone. I might want to do it by action owner, right? So me as an allocator of work, I've realized that, my project manager just disregard the placeholder for a second, maybe doesn't need to do that reverse demo. What I might do is I might get the consultant to do that. So what that's done now is that has then changed that reverse demo for the consultant. So I'll just drag that back. What I can do as well is I can collapse these cards. So this is just like a basic view. When I expand the card, we've got a couple of quick actions here on the right-hand side. So I mentioned I would touch on a little bit of information about the collaboration piece. So I can actually utilize the chatter field directly from here. It's got a history, of any changes that I've made. Maybe what I want to do is I want to chatter one of my colleagues. So I'll, chatter Kelly Slater and just say, hey, Kelly, I have nearly completed this. And then when I share that, that's then going to share a notification with Kelly. And that's a nice way to kind of communicate with our teams. So going back to the overview page, I just want to explain a little bit around why we would utilize placeholder roles. So the first reason is when we're building templates, we know that as an example, this needs analysis milestone needs a project manager against it. Okay. Then as I expand, this requirement session, I'm going to need a consultant because they're going to consult with the client to make sure that we've got all of their requirements. And that's probably the first part of why we would want to have that in there. So I create my template for my implementation rollout. I know the role types or the individual types that I want to allocate to those pieces of work, but I just don't know who's going to be allocated to that work to start. So then going into how we would allocate a piece of work to an individual is utilizing this tool here called the Resource Assignment Wizard. And this is going to be like a one-for-one swap. So you can see here I've got my placeholder roles. And what I want to do is I want to actually search now for my team of project managers. There's a couple of other ways we can filter. So you can filter based on skill. So this is based on the role record of the individual, right? We're going to put in what their hours they work per week, what their cost rates, billable, non-billable, what skills they have, where they're located, what teams are a part of. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to search for a team. But as an example, I might want to say, this person needs to have HTML and I need them to be at about a 5 level of proficiency for that piece of work. So I mentioned I was going to keep it simple. So I'm just going to have a look at my team of project managers. I'm going to click search here. And this is now going to give me, the most recommended people for this piece of work. We have a heat map to see how many hours that individual has been allocated at that time during that time period. So I can see Josh is pretty much free at the moment. He's got a couple of hours that he's got scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add Josh as the action owner for this. The other thing that we can do for specific actions is add what we call contributors. So let's say Josh is working on a really, really big piece of work, but we actually need 2 project managers on there. So what I might do is I'm going to add Kelly, my other project manager. We'll get rid of these placeholders because they obviously don't exist. And then now what I've got here is Josh owning the action and then Kelly being there as support. So I'm going to click save on this. And what you'll notice here is the action owner is updated. So Josh has been allocated. And then when I come across, I can see there that I've got Kelly as my contributor at the top of that list. So that's one way that we can assign new bits of work or new tasks to individuals. Another way that we can add people or allocate individuals to projects is using what we call our auto assignment wizard. Now, this is, I'm not going to call it AI, right? This has been out for a while before all the, the craze of AI has come out. But what this is going to do is this is going to recommend us individuals that can work on these specific pieces of the project based on the team that they're working and based on the amount of hours that they've got available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this assign button. I've got my little pal Cosmo there going across the conveyor belt. He's about to shoot off into space. And then it's going to give me some recommendations. So you can see here we've got a percentage match on the side. Generally, the placeholders are always going to have the highest percentages because they're not actually allocated to work. But then it's given me a couple of options for each role type that I need. So I'm thinking just because Alana's at about 55%, I'll apply Alana as the junior consultant. For the actual consultant, what I want to do is maybe assign Carissa. As I scroll down, I'm going to get Julian to work as a trainer. I'll get Josh as the project manager for this piece. I'm going to get Josh again for this piece. We'll do Kelly for that one. And then let's do Geordie Smith as a developer. Now I'm going to hit assign, and that's just going to do a little bit of thinking in the background. We can see here that we've now got our total amount of scheduled billable hours, total schedule hours in total. All of my individuals have been assigned. I'm going to hit close on that. Give that a couple of seconds and then hit refresh. Go back to my overview tab. And we can see here now that we have all of our users and employees assigned to that piece of work. All right, so next thing that we're going to go through together is what we call the resource planner. And what I really want to focus on here is resource requests. So let's say I've got an upcoming project that, I need a couple of people on. I'm not utilizing the scheduler, or I'm not trying to look at the capacity at the moment. What I want it to do is I want it to recommend somebody based on specific criteria that I've set. So you can see here I'm looking for a project manager. It's been requested by Josh. This is the project that they're going to be working on, and just a couple of notes or a reason as to why. And I can see here that I need a PM for this project, please. When I created this request, I set the start and end date that I'm going to need them for. Very similar to the previous screen, right? We can filter as we're searching for people. So I'm just going to keep it simple and look for project managers. I'm going to click the search button, and it's going to give me some examples or, some options as to who I want to choose. So what I might do is I might have a look here, capacity overview. Josh is still pretty under capacity at the moment, which is good. And I know that Kelly is pretty free at the moment as well. So what I might want to do is compare the two together. I can have a little bit more of a detail, get rid of the ones that I don't need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select Josh from this, and then I'm going to click save on that after I set a role. And I'm going to get a consultant. And now what we have is Josh has been assigned to that, and then that resource request has completed. All right, now from a productivity and I guess like a further resourcing way of doing things, I'm going to click this option up the top called the scheduler. Now, what this is at the moment, let me just set it to the actions to start. This is a overview of all of my staff that are working at the moment and all of the projects that they're working on as well. We can have different views, the way that we want to have a look at it. So we can look by months, we can look by weeks, we can look by days. And I can also filter who I want to see. So Teams is probably just the easiest at the moment. I want to have a look at just my consultants as an example. And we can see here, okay, all of my consultants, they're looking pretty busy. Bit of information that's going to pull here on the left-hand side. So we can see remaining allocation. Bethany's pretty over capacity at the moment. So she's probably got a lot of work on. Maybe we want to move stuff around and allocate it to somebody else. The placeholder consultant piece as well comes into play here. So we can see here that I've got unassigned work, technically unassigned work, just because it's attached to a placeholder. I actually want to move this build and I'm going to allocate this to Mick. And once that's been allocated to Mick, Mick can receive a notification to say, hey, you've been allocated to this piece of work. Let us know if you've got any questions. This is what the previous screen was on. And I'm just going to clear my filter just so then we can see kind of what this heat map looks like. But when I'm resourcing and I guess I'm planning for work, what we want to be able to do is see people's capacity. So I can see here that the week of the 29th, Mickey's working pretty hard. When I hover over this, we can see the different pieces of work that he's working on. So I'm probably not going to try to allocate work to Mick for that week. So schedule is a really awesome feature. I love the heat map part as well. Really nice way to visualize the amount of work people are doing. And yeah, we can filter, based on the information that we want to see there. Alrighty, so we've covered a couple of tools within an individual project. We've had a look at the scheduler, which is overarching across all of the work that's happening. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go into my master Gantt chart. So this really is a Gantt chart that's going to show us all pieces of work that are going to be completed, and it's all in the one place, right? So, me as a resource allocator or a person that's working on a bunch of projects, I can, oversee exactly what's happening in future. So I've collapsed all this to just show just my projects on the right-hand side, so you can see that that's there. When I expand, I'm going to be able to see my milestones that, make up those individual projects. I'm going to click it again, and I'm going to be able to see my individual actions that make up the milestones. And then maybe I want to have a look at some checklist items as well. Now, from what I know, Mission Control at the moment is pretty much one of the only products that allows for being able to connect dependencies from project to project. So as an example, I might know that this individual is working. So you can see here, Josh Barron, project manager. I actually also want Josh to be working on this piece of work too. And we can see here that we've designed that. So from a planning perspective, to make sure that, Josh is working on things the right way, we can connect, individual projects to other projects, and that's going to really help them, plan their day out. So that's the master Gantt chart, the Gantt chart that, oversees all of our views. And then we've also got like a master whiteboard as well, which I think is a really important one. Now, where I see this being used is, you've got a project manager or a project allocator that's overseeing a team. We want to go in and have a quick look at how the team performing. So I think the status column heading for this page is really, really important. So let's just say as an example, we have a bunch of, actions that are sitting in the on hold column, right? Me as a project manager or a manager of a team, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be thinking, why have I got 5 actions on hold at the moment? So this is really, really going to help us make informed decision when we're managing the team. And you'll notice we've got our quick action options on the side here. So as an example, I know that I've got an individual working on this piece. So I might say, Mick, I noticed this has been put on hold for a few weeks now. What's happening? So I think this is a really, really good way to, oversee the work that's being done. It's going to improve efficiencies. And I really like that, you have the option to be able to communicate relevant to that piece of work as well, utilizing that chatter feed there. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to jump back into the project that we created. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we log time. Now, there's multiple ways that we can log time within Mission Control. So starting from the first option, we've got time logs here. We can see that we haven't logged any time against this individual project just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this new button, and I am going to log time against here. So we've got the set date. We'll just set it as today. It's going to pull the project because we're on that project page. I'm going to select the action, so it's just the reverse demo. We can relate it to a milestone. We can relate it to a checklist item. I'm going to say that I've completed 6 hours on this. 6 hours was scheduled. So we'll set that as complete, and I can put a note here to say, "Hi team, I've I have just completed this piece, this action. Let me know if you have questions." So what I can then do is log my time. So that's, creating a log time timesheet. Then what I'll do as well, because I mentioned when we were going through the slides that we do have a start stop timer. So I'm just going to create a new one, but I'm not actually going to do it. Give me 1 second. Select that against the action. Now, this start tracking time, what's going to happen is the second that I click this, a timer is going to start, right? So where I see this being used is, I'm about to start on a project. I don't want to have to think about how many hours I've worked just from memory. I want to be as accurate as possible. So when I hit that start tracking time, the timer starts. When I've completed the work, I come in and stop the timer. It's then going to create that timesheet for me. We also have some quick launch actions down the bottom here. So you can see here I've got my log time, log expenses. I can add a risk, I can add a requirement. So just clicking the log time option here. Because I'm on this Billabong webinar page, it's going to pull the project, which I think is a Swifty feature. And then again, exactly the same functionality. Choose the action that I'm looking for, put my hours completed, update the status, and then log that there. Now, what I would probably say is the main place that people are logging time is going to be against their timesheets. This is going to be a much more granular way for them to be able to reflect the time, that they're working on. So I can see here my role has been selected. I'm choosing the month that I'm working in. These are all of the actions that I'm currently working on, or the different projects that I'm working on, actions related there. And you'll see here I've got my options. So I can say, I did 1 hour on this day, I did 2 hours on this day, and then I did another 3 on this day, which totals my 6. And then once I'm happy with filling out all of this information, I can save my timesheet as a draft, or I can save and submit that timesheet. I mentioned earlier in the slides as well that we do have an approval process. You can have a double approval process if you wanted to, but generally most of our clients, when they're, got their team submitting timesheets, goes through some kind of approval process, just to make sure those hours are accurate from a billing perspective. Alrighty, we're getting towards the end now, and what I wanted to cover was just a little bit of information about our billing. So we're not an accounting platform. We don't necessarily work like a Xero or a MyOb or a NetSuite. But what we can do is we can integrate with tools like that. So there is a way to connect Salesforce and Mission Control to tools like that using like a third-party app as a connector. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull any billing information across from Mission Control, put it into our accounting software, so that we can actually start to receive funds. So what I've done is I've gone back to my webinar demo page. I've selected my billing option. We can see here that I don't have any billing events, which I'll explain in a sec. So what I want to do is I actually want to create a brand new billing event here. So what I'm going to say here is, part payment as an example. We want to set this as a draft. We're going to set the invoice date as today. Let's give them a week to pay it. There's different ways to set up payment terms, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. I want to relay it back to an account as an example, potentially. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click save. And that's now going to create my billing event. So for us to be able to generate an invoice with line items in it, what I have to do now is I have to go to my related field, and we have to create what we call a billing event item. So I'm going to click this new button. I'm going to say part payment, discovery. complete. What I want to do is I want to put an amount in here. So we'll say $5,000. I'm going to say tax is applicable. We'll do 10%. Let's say we're based in Australia. Oh, disregard that. If we're based in Australia, we would have created tax rates in the back end. So GST, different options, for the other global areas. I'll save that. And we can see here now that I've got a $5,000 line item, tax is applicable, and it's pulled through that tax amount. Now, what I want to do is actually show you an example of what an invoice could look like. We can have logos on there, make it nice and pretty, and it's going to have our line items. Now, this is obviously a manual way to generate the invoice, so this is probably what we would be doing if we didn't have accounting software integrated, and we're just manually sending that invoice to those individuals. So you can see here, you'll be able to put your logo. It's got our company details at the top. We've got the invoice date and the due date of when that invoice is made. And then we can see here that I've got my line items to show, what amount they need to pay. Now I'm actually going to go back one step because I just realized that I forgot to add a description. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, paste that in there, hit save again. Let's go to back to the billing event and generate this PDF again, just to make it look prettier. There we go. So there's my line item title from the description. So really, really straightforward process. As you go through the implementation, that's going to, be a part of what we help you get up and running. And that's, a nice way to go and charge customers. So that's what we're going to go through today. Thank you so much for joining. A couple of things that I'll touch on just before we do jump off. I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to have a trial of Mission Control, go to our App Exchange listing, search Mission Control Project Management for Salesforce. You'll click this Get It Now option. It's going to ask you to log into your Trailblazer account and then select which instance you would like to install that in. We've also got this tried option, which is like a global sandbox. So there's probably a lot of data in there, but it's really more of a limited way to play around with the functionality. You're not going to be able to utilize all the pieces. So if you are interested in starting a trial, you guys can do that, on your own. You can also reach out to me if you'd like to. That's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day basis. Now, this webinar is going to be recorded, well, it is recorded, and it'll be on this webinar page. This is the Aprika website, which has got all of our content on here. There's a lot of webinars that we've run over the years. Then touching on a little bit of the training stuff. So I mentioned, no implementation required. Realistically, you could get up and running utilizing these training videos. We've got 2 real deep dive videos on the mission control functionality and then feature training videos along there. Then we do also run similar webinars, but really focused on specific features. So you can see here as an example, a couple of weeks ago, we did one for the reassignment wizard. And this is like, going to cover everything in detail from start to finish, what we go through there. So thank you so much for joining, everybody. It was really, really great to connect with you all. You'll get an email with a recording after this, which will have my details. Please reach out if you've got any questions. And yeah, we hope to see you soon. Thanks so much.